The colonization of Africa. A full history one. Pre-colonial Africa. A continent of kingdoms and empires. Before colonization, Africa was home to advanced civilizations, empires, and trading systems. Great empires such as the Mali Empire, West Africa, the Kingdom of Congo, Central Africa, Great Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, Aksum Empire, East Africa, Benin Kingdom, Nigeria. These societies had complex political systems, vibrant cultures, and extensive trade networks with Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Africans controlled their own resources and land. 2. Early European contact, 15th–18th century. European involvement began with Portuguese explorers in the 1400s, followed by the Dutch, Spanish, French, and British. This period was marked by coastal trade. Europe traded guns, cloth, and alcohol for African gold, ivory, and slaves. The transatlantic slave trade, 1500s, 1800s. Millions of Africans were captured and sold to work in the Americas, devastating African communities and weakening kingdoms. Missionary activity. European missionaries began spreading Christianity, often undermining local belief systems. However, most of the African interior remained unexplored and independent during this time. 3. The Scramble for Africa, 1881–1914. The true colonization of Africa began in the late 19th century during a period called the Scramble for Africa, when European powers aggressively took over African territories. Causes of colonization. Economic. European industrialization created a need for raw materials, rubber, gold, oil, and new markets. Political. Nations wanted to gain prestige by acquiring colonies. Racism and ideology. Belief in European racial superiority, social Darwinism, and the mission to civilize Africans, white man's burden. Strategic reasons. Control of key trade routes and naval bases. Key event. The Berlin Conference, 1884. 1885. Hosted by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. 14 European nations met in Berlin to divide Africa among themselves without any African representatives. The continent was carved up with no regard for ethnic, cultural, or linguistic boundaries. Agreements were made to claim territories by establishing effective control. 4. The partition and conquest of Africa. After the Berlin Conference, European countries rushed to occupy and control African territories. By 1914, over 90% of Africa was under European rule. Major colonial powers and their territories: Britain, Egypt, Sudan, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, France, Algeria, Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, Madagascar, Tunisia, Germany, Namibia, German Southwest Africa, Tanzania, Cameroon, Togo, lost after WWI, Belgium, Democratic Republic of Congo, Belgian Congo, Portugal, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Italy, Libya, Eritrea, Somalia, Spain, Western Sahara, Equatorial Guinea. Methods of control. Military force. Resistance was met with brutal suppression, e.g. Maji Rebellion in Tanzania, Herero Genocide in Namibia. Divide and rule. European powers used ethnic and tribal divisions to maintain control. Indirect rule, especially British, used local leaders to govern on behalf of colonial powers. Assimilation policy, used by France, tried to convert Africans into Frenchmen. 5. African resistance to colonization. Africans did not accept colonization passively. There were many uprisings and wars of resistance. Samori Toure resisted the French in West Africa. Shaka Zulu and the Zulu Kingdom fought the British and Boers in South Africa. Menelik II of Ethiopia defeated Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, making Ethiopia one of the few African nations to remain independent. 6. Impact of colonization. Social. Destruction of traditional cultures, religions, and social structures. Introduction of European languages, education, and religion. Artificial borders led to ethnic conflicts that still exist today. Economic. African economies were reorganized to serve European interests. Exploitation of African labor and resources. Infrastructure, railroads, ports, was built mainly to export raw materials. Political. Africans were excluded from political power. Centralized colonial governments imposed foreign laws and systems. 7. Path to independence, 1945. 1994. After World War II, anti-colonial movements grew stronger. Africans began demanding self-rule, inspired by global decolonization and independence movements in Asia. Pan-Africanism, led by figures like Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and Julius Nyerere, called for unity and liberation. Armed struggles took place in Algeria, Angola, Mozambique, and Kenya. Mau Mau Uprising. Key milestones. Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence in 1957. Most African nations gained independence between 1957 and 1975. South Africa ended apartheid and held its first democratic elections in 1994, marking the final major milestone in African liberation. Conclusion. Colonization drastically reshaped Africa's societies, economies, and borders. It brought about suffering, resistance, and transformation. Though it ended politically in the mid-20th century, its legacy continues through neo-colonialism, economic dependency, and ongoing struggles for unity, justice, and development.